Hey guys, Danny with Gustin Fitness here. My number one man, Nico.
How's it going?
We today are going to be going through just a bunch of client questions. We had a bunch of clients. We basically have been surveying our team and asking for different questions and different things people wanted us to cover. And so we've got a lot of good questions today that we're going to get into. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it, a lot of good content in here, some tangents that might make you laugh and will be entertaining, but definitely you'll be glad you stuck around. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and let's get into it. All right, what's up, dude?
How's it going?
Good, man. I'm excited for this one.
Me too.
So we're going to do things obviously a little bit differently today, a little bit more focused. We're just going to go straight into some client questions.
Yes.
And kind of just go back and forth, get some good content for our people here, get some answers to these questions to the best of our ability, and
of course,
we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So one of the big questions that we got a lot was, how can I use exercise to keep my body from breaking down as I age? So I know you have a lot of good insights on this one, so I'd love you to kick it off.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different angles that can go, but I'd say just off the top of my head, you want to be doing certain exercises that will help with any kind of muscle imbalance you might have. We've talked about like corrective exercise before. I feel like that's really important. I think that just general consistency is important. Yeah. I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh, well,
it's
almost with anything, right?
Daily movement of any kind, I think, is important.
Yeah.
So to start, I think stuff like that. And then, making sure you have some resistance training, a balance of, a little bit of maybe cardio, resistance training, because some people might leave that out. But that's, in fact, how we stay strong.
Yeah.
As we naturally atrophy, lose muscle as we get older.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
But that's so true. In fact, if I could speak to the, you mentioned just consistently moving.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the things that pops up as you get older is you start to run into things like arthritis and stenosis and maybe even osteoporosis, right? Yeah. And while each of those obviously has a lot of nuance to it, especially depending on what kind of any of those things it is, I personally have many clients I've worked with who have had issues like that. So have you. Mm-hmm. I personally have issues like that now for myself. So I have moderate to severe arthritis in my right knee.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm only 34 years old. So every once in a while when I have clients talking about how, just wait till you're 40.
Yeah.
Just wait till you're 50. Like, I'm 34 now, so am I just going to wake up on my 40th birthday and just start screaming like Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin
just in
style?
A ton of pain
just
already.
Explode, right?
Yeah.
But seriously, though, my right knee, oftentimes, the days that I will feel some of my tough days, I'm like, man, this is not going great today. It's stiff. It's not feeling so good. Sometimes the worst days I have are when for several days I've been saying, I just need to let it rest.
Interesting.
Where when I finally just go, you know what, I just need to move. I have to move. I mean, sensibly, of course.
Of course.
But just move. Those are the days where I feel so much better when I'm done. Even the next day, I might have a little stiffness, but there is a significant material difference between how I feel that day. And
just by moving it a little bit around, getting whatever
blood
it might
flow,
be, blood flow,
getting that synovial fluid through the joints, whatever else, and it just ends up feeling so much better. So I think that's a huge takeaway from, if I was to give just one tip to people who are looking at not breaking down as they age, it's you have to find that balance between moving and working the body and stressing the muscles, stressing the bones enough, but obviously not so much so that you are, making it much worse and barely able to walk for like a week because you pushed it too much.
Right.
But sometimes working through a little bit of discomfort is going to be better than the alternative of just letting that joint get all dry, letting the muscles around that area atrophy so there's less insulation. Mm-hmm. So I would just say find a way to keep moving sensibly, but if you've got some issues like arthritis and stenosis and any other thing that pops up. You know,
Uh-huh.
I strongly encourage anyone to just
More movement
find a way to move
every day to
every
some
day.
degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, sometimes lately I've been thinking about just, you know, for my knees, just those days where, you know, I am feeling a little bit stiff, but maybe I don't have the time to go into the gym for too long. Just do like 20 body weight squats.
Body weight squats. Yep.
Right. And for me, I know that's reasonable. Right.
20, yeah.
You know, if I'm not
Of
going to
course, it
feel
depends, yeah.
debilitated after that. For
Yeah.
some people, that might be different. But for whatever that is, I think getting movement in, getting those big workouts in, yes, but kind of to that point.
Yeah.
Even little micro workouts.
Micro.
Like
I like that.
little mini workouts.
Yeah.
Right. I think is huge. So do you have any more you want to add to that one?
I don't think so. I think we go to the next one.
Awesome. So next one we have is actually habits to stay strong and pain-free. So kind of a similar one, right? But
Yeah.
maybe we could kind of put a different spin on that. It's not necessarily related to age.
Yeah, the key word is habits. So that's regular things you're probably doing consistently throughout your day. So, I mean, the first thing that came up for me is looking more into nutrition too, like getting enough protein and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
You could speak on that, I'm sure, because you have the nutritionist certification. But
you're the fruit man.
the fruit man. Yeah, I mean, the question was to stay strong, was it? Or
So habits to stay strong and pain-free from
Okay.
Jackie.
Yeah, I mean, fruit, yeah, sure. Like, it's just healthy for you in general, so I believe that'll be good as well. But, I mean, my first thing is thinking, like, protein.
Really?
For building, to stay strong, my first thing I think of is, like, keeping muscle and building muscle
Yeah.
to support the joints and things like that. So that's the first thing I'd say, making sure you're getting enough protein, because we already talked about like the exercise portion. So
Yeah.
I don't know, do you have anything like besides exercise or nutrition?
I would
That
to
you wanna
piggyback off the protein thing. So I have a client, Will's in his mid-30s, and he's got some issues too, right? Him and I bond over knee stuff.
Yeah.
But Will is a beast, and he works out with some pretty significant frequency. So he does like legit boxing workouts twice a week. He's strength training 3 to 4 times a week. His wife is a group instructor at a place called Vasa.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm not entirely sure, but I think they have group classes and
Yeah,
things
they
like
do.
that. And he'll do those even like once a week too. So
Wow.
I mean, he's getting like 5 to 6.
So
at
a lot
least
of volume, yeah.
significant workouts throughout week, and the
Sure.
strength training sessions are pretty strenuous too.
Yeah.
Because he wants to build muscle. So one of the things I would say Will does that's a lot better than most people, even myself included, he eats a lot of protein.
Okay.
And I'm not talking like a ridiculous amount, like old school bodybuilder mentality, like 2 grams per every pound of body weight.
Right.
But, you know, he's in like the low 200s. He's a tall guy too. And he's probably eating about 180 grams of protein per day. And he swears by the fact, and there's data to support this, you know,
Yeah.
he swears by the fact that his ability to keep up with that level of training volume and stress
Yeah.
is directly correlated to getting enough protein, so that they're just all the breaking down he's doing of the body.
Yeah, it's recovering better.
There's that, you know, ample amount of protein just to kind of
Wow.
build things back up.
I'm
Like
sure
the-
he supplements it a little bit, or is it mostly coming from like eating protein-rich foods?
Well, I think he eats a good diet in general,
Okay.
like good amount of vegetables, fruit, fiber,
Okay.
etc. But I would say if you were to ask him, he would probably say that the protein is the biggest thing.
Wow.
And water, you know, you got to be drinking
Yeah.
a lot of water.
Properly
But
hydrated.
the analogy I like to use with building the muscle is, or protein, is strength training is almost like you do a good workout, and it's almost like sending out a job posting to say, hey, I need workers.
I like
We're
that.
we're trying to build this building, let's
Yeah.
say, right? And so strength training creates that stimulus, which is the job posting, to
Yeah.
where, you know, the next day you have people showing up for the job, right? But protein is, you sent out that stimulus, you have all the workers ready to build, but there's no concrete. There's no whatever, right?
I've never
Brick.
heard this.
Brick,
You
right?
say that. I like that. Yeah.
You know, so that's where, when you don't have sufficient calories, you don't have sufficient protein, and
Yeah.
you know, even carbs, fats, any
Missing like the foundation.
yeah. everyone's ready to work, but there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like nothing happens.
Yeah. So your body just gets broken down.
Right.
And so you could see how if you're a fit, active person, but you're just constantly breaking down and not building back up, how that would end up in this
absolutely
repetitive sort of bad cycle.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm with you. I think protein is definitely a great way. And kind of piggybacking off of our last point, just stay moving.
Yeah, just movement in general.
Yeah, whatever that looks like for you, right?
Maybe there's a mental aspect too, just a good mindset, positive mindset for staying, I guess, in the right mindset, I guess, of being strong. I don't know.
Yeah, almost like, are you saying like a fear mindset almost?
Yeah.
Because I definitely know I've had a lot of clients over the years like that who are just afraid to move.
Yeah.
Especially once you start on that injury rabbit hole, where it can be this vicious cycle where you get hurt.
Yeah, it's like my knee's hurting, so I don't want to squat or something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to move. And then I don't do that thing anymore.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely, like the
gets smaller
the circle
and smaller.
gets smaller and smaller of things you can do. And it's, before you know it, you're atrophying.
Yeah.
Your joints don't have any lubrication.
That's
Maybe
so
even
true.
your lymph nodes aren't, draining properly. And at that point, it's just you could get to a point of no return.
Yeah.
So
become so weak to the point.
yeah, it could be even like, I forget who wrote it, but remember up front someone said, you think lifting's scary, try being weak. Right? And obviously weak's a relative term, but I would say weak is just anything if you're not able to do the things you want to be able to do in your life.
Yeah.
And for some person that might just mean picking up a bag of mulch.
Yeah.
For someone else that might be deadlifting 300 pounds,
Yeah.
right? But
different for
regardless.
everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Keep it going.
Keep it going. Next one is healthy food. Same from Jackie as well. Thanks, Jackie. Healthy food ideas that are natural and not processed. I am going to let you do that one. I call Nico the fruit guy because Nico,
can we elaborate?
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Nico here is always just coming up with, all of the trainers, everyone on the team here gets a kick out of the fact that, we'll come into the break room and just see what fruit Nico has today, right? Is he eating a kiwi? Is he eating dragon fruit?
Yeah.
He's eating dragon. And for anyone who hasn't seen a dragon fruit, you got to Google a dragon fruit. It's so cool. But anyways, Nico, you do eat a pretty I would say you really exemplify a whole foods diet where almost everything I see you eat. I mean, I know you're Italian and you eat your pasta and stuff like that.
For the most part.
But I
mean, my family and I will eat out once or twice a week too, so.
Yeah.
And that's not the best. But in terms of healthy food, that's how it's worded, right? Healthy foods.
Yeah. What would you even say healthy
right,
foods is?
Right, because my first question is like, what does healthy mean exactly? But, I mean, you mentioned fruit.
What would be your definition of healthy foods?
Of healthy foods? Honestly, that how it's worded there as well, because I would consider it foods that are minimally processed.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, I heard someone say this too one time, where it's like single ingredient foods. And what I mean by single, not like if you make like a stew or something that's multiple ingredients, but each of those ingredients are one thing. So like a carrot's a carrot. The beef is beef. Like it's not something that has multiple things added, multiple ingredients added to it.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to like processed foods and things that are added to it.
Yeah. That's a good point, because I think a lot of people, even myself at certain points, have heard that and thought, oh, okay. Like if you look at the ingredient list on the back of a product label, you go, oh, there's like 9 things there.
Yeah.
But if the 9 things are carrots, rosemary,
exactly.
actual things that you saw, you would know what it is.
Yep. So that's a big thing I would say, like single ingredient things, minimal processed foods. Yeah, fruit. I always default to fruit just because I feel like it's just a good thing to eat. I mean,
why fruits over vegetables? Because I know you talk about fruit more than vegetables. It seems
they're both are good, and we need both.
Because a lot of people would say the opposite, right? Conventional wisdom.
Yeah. A lot of people might say that too much of anything is not good. So I do. I don't just eat fruit all day long.
He eats fruit all day long.
So I like to have fruit like as one of the first things I eat in a day.
Okay.
So most of the fruit I eat is like in the morning, for the most part.
Okay.
I just feel my intuition. I just go off of what I feel best doing. I've tried a lot of different things over the years, and I feel best when I just eat fruit. It just feels light on my stomach and gets me energized and stuff like that. And yeah, the fruit and vegetable thing, vegetables are just as important, I believe, for the fiber and everything. But I just gravitate more if I had to pick one to fruit.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily pick one over the other. I eat both.
And is some of it just preference of just enjoying the flavor of fruit?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that goes into, you can talk about conventional wisdom and guidelines till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
But ultimately, whatever you can implement and adhere to is going to be the best solution.
Yeah.
So if that looks like eating a little bit more of this, maybe having a little bit more red meat, a little bit more whatever, you almost have to combine guidelines with what works best for you.
Yeah.
And if you have concerns, obviously go get blood work,
Right.
consult with your physician, all that. But I definitely think I've seen the most fit, healthy people I know combine the guidelines with their own intuition.
That's what I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I would say also, as far as the processed foods, to even expand on that a little bit, because just eating single ingredients can be stifling for some people.
Yeah.
I would say just a good rule of thumb is just know what the ingredient is.
Yes, if you could pronounce it right, or if you know,
Even
what it is.
if you just know what it is, like, so for example, for a while I was going, oh, guar gum. No, what the heck is guar gum? I can't have guar gum.
Yeah.
And then you look into it, and it's a safe emulsifier, right?
Interesting.
So it's just something that.
See, I didn't know that. I assumed it was bad too, because I've seen that it's on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's just something that helps. It's a binding agent, right? So it just helps keep things together, right? Where there's some that aren't as well received.
Some are a little more toxic.
So just do your homework, right, and just know what you're putting in your body, right?
Yeah.
That's probably a great way to just. For most people, that's a good foundation for just eating "quote unquote" healthy, right?
And I think just a healthy, meaning just a balanced diet of, enough protein, good quality carbs. Again, you could speak probably better on carbs, and healthy fats.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
the macronutrients.
It's because the balance is, I feel like, key to just keeping. You obviously there's benefits to protein, there's benefits to carbs, there's different benefits to fat, but I feel like when they're all mixed together in the right quantities for you and for whatever performance you're trying to enhance, that's where you get the best results. Because you and I have talked about this a lot, and maybe we're skipping it. Actually, we'll go right into the next thing.
Okay.
So we all need carbs, but what is the right amount? Right?
Okay.
And so, general recommendation would be 45 to 65% of your diet. But there's almost a couple layers to that feed off what we've been talking about. So, for example, that's the guideline, right? But there's people out there who are on carnivore diets, ketogenic diets, right? There's all these different things, right? And some people swear by it, right? That is anecdotal still, but that's what you have to do. You have to use your guidelines and just use what works best for you. So you and I have talked about how my brother and I would even say my family, we kind of respond to carbs a little bit more intensely than the average person. So I find myself being more prone to crashing than I would say the average person, to where when I can look in my diet and see, oh, that's a lot of carbohydrates, like maybe it is only like 50, 60%, but for some reason that feels like a lot for me. I find my energy throughout the day.
It's not consistent.
And a food crash for me really sucks.
Oh, they're bad. I know other people can probably relate to them, but I know what you mean.
Especially with what we do, where...
Do you feel like you can just go to sleep?
Yeah.
Because if I was having one right now, I'd be like, if we weren't doing this podcast, I'm just going to start falling asleep.
Yeah.
If it's a crash.
Yeah.
It's just brutal,
And especially with what we do, we're coaches.
Yeah.
And so not that we need to be bouncing off the wall. You and I are both pretty even-keeled people. But we are encouragers. We are supporters. We are facilitating an experience for an hour. And when I feel in the midst of a crash for something like that, it almost feels like torture to me.
Yeah.
I just, I can't shake, oh my gosh, I feel awful right now.
Yeah.
And I really wish I could just be laying down instead of working right now.
Yeah.
Which stinks, because I want to be working and I want to be with that person.
It's like your body's not allowing you to, though.
So But on the flip side, carbohydrates are so key for athletic performance.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but
I try to eat some carbs before a workout.
you gotta
Good
have
quality
carbs. You gotta have carbs in your system. I mean, I've had some workouts where I've tried going too low carb and I just feel flat. I feel weak. I feel lethargic. And then I have enough stores in my system from carbs, from whether it just be carbs the day before with glycogen, getting those glycogen stores up, or just in general, maybe not a few hours beforehand. If I have enough carbs, the workout just feels night and day.
Way different.
So for me, it's that balance of, okay, here's the guidelines, 45 to 65%. Here is, okay, I have these crashes, but also you need carbs for athletic performance, right? So you have to find that balance between maybe I've personally been tinkering around with trying to get my carbs lower on the lower end of the scale, maybe closer to, I don't measure it too closely, like tracking wise to whether it's like 40% or this percent, but I try to keep it a little bit lower, like maybe 30, 40 grams per meal, sometimes 50. But another thing I've really been experimenting with, and it's been working really well for me, is I have less carbs for breakfast and lunch, and I will have a ton of carbs at dinner time.
Okay, that works well for you?
It works well for me because actually another interesting point about that is you are less insulin sensitive in the evening. So for example, if you and I just ate a stack of pancakes first thing in the morning, go back to bed, right? But if you eat a stack,
I probably would.
Yeah, right. But if you eat a stack of pancakes in the night, you won't feel nearly the same way.
Wow.
And that's because your body's response to producing insulin is less sensitive. And so I find that I can get these larger carbohydrate meals and make up for maybe being, like if I was trending from breakfast and lunch to be maybe 20% of my diet from carbs, I can get those numbers up to where now, again, it's like 40, 50% from a larger snack, carbohydrate meal, and I don't have that crash. And even if I do have that crash, the day's over.
Yeah, who cares?
I could just relax.
Yeah.
So I would say that has been a key thing for me with the carbohydrate intake is use the guidelines, play around with what works best for you. You got to eat enough carbs to fuel your athletic performance, but play around with things like nutrient timing, and maybe exploring the lower ends of those spectrums for some people.
Yeah.
And maybe some people need more. I mean, there's probably people out there who can eat 70, 80% of, maybe not that much, but maybe 70% of their calories coming from carbs.
Yeah.
And they don't crash. And good on them, right?
Yeah.
But, so that's why you got to take those guidelines and just personalize it a little bit.
Do you have any recommendations for certain carb foods for people to eat prior to a workout? I know everyone's different, but...
Yeah, I would say prior to a workout.
Yeah, to fuel, with the goal of like fueling a workout.
Yeah, I would say how close to a workout are we talking?
An hour or less?
Okay, if it's an hour or less, it definitely has to be in the simple carb department.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, simple carbs would just refer to basically simple sugars. So fructose, sucrose, put on the spot. It's fructose, glucose, and maltose.
Okay.
So those are the three.
Okay.
But basically, for all intents and purposes, that is where you're going to be getting your fruit.
Yeah.
Right?
That's my first choice.
Sports drinks, right? Where you just have pure sugar.
So would that be a good example? Be like the thing where people say to do like honey and like sea salt. Like honey is a good example, right? Of like something to carb wise have before a workout.
Yeah, I believe honey is like a mix of fructose and glucose, I think. But none of that even really matters. It's just you're just eating something that's classified as sugar.
Right.
Right. So whether or not that be from a sports drink, whether or not that be from fruit, whether or not that be from something like, honey or whatever it is, or even milk, right?
Oh, yeah, milk.
Like the sugar, that's where the sugar and milk comes from. It's not added, it's just naturally existing.
Naturally occurring, yeah.
So having those things that are just quickly digestible, like available sugars, that's the key. The more complex it gets, the more fiber you start adding to the mix. Not that fiber's bad, but obviously there's fiber in fruit. But just the less accessible that that sugar is
That
for
makes
immediate
sense.
use.
Accessible, yeah.
But you want that immediate use,
Yeah.
right? So if you did the inverse of that, if you want more of that steady energy, you may not want to rely as heavily on just simple sugars to get through your day, right? You may want to balance that with more fiber,
right,
more complex carbs.
That makes sense.
But you got to find what works best for you. So
Makes total
short
sense.
answer would just be, if you're that close to a workout, you definitely want just sugars in some source, whether it's dairy, sports drinks,
fruit,
some
Awesome.
sort of like sports glucose type of product.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, moving on. So,
Okay.
all right, so next question we have, how to create and embrace sustainability of diet and exercise over time?
I would say, develop a routine that works for you. Because if it becomes a routine, then it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is cheesy, and I've probably said this on previous podcasts, and I'll probably say it again. But for me, the last year or two, should is the S word to me. Normally we know what it means, right? But for me, that's the real S word, because how many times do you hear people say, oh, I know that's what I should be doing, or I know I should be working out more, or I know I should be doing this or that. And ultimately, you got to ask yourself why. Because you heard it somewhere, because that's what your friend does. Ultimately, you have to have good reasoning for why you're doing something. And if you can accomplish a task with less work, why wouldn't you? Like, let's say your goal is to be lean, right? Or relative to you, right? Whatever that means for you, right? Having a lean physique that you're comfortable with. If you can get that from working out 2 days a week and maybe making some changes to how you eat, sleep more, why do you need to work out 6 days a week? Where someone else might be totally type A and have a ton of nervous energy on a regular basis, and they might, the act of working out that many times might really just make them feel better. It might be a little bit more of a mental health thing, right?
Absolutely.
So I think a big part of just creating and embracing sustainability, whether it be diet or exercise, is asking yourself what you want to do, why you're doing it, and initially just start with the least aggressive. I mean, if you're feeling super stoked about it, go for it, right? But for those of you who are reluctant to approach it because you're fearful you'll get burnt out, just start small and just see how that goes. You can always add more later.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd much rather be in the place where I'm not seeing results and I'm working 2 days a week than, I'm not seeing results and I'm working out 5 days a week. I mean, how discouraging is that to be putting that much effort forth with nothing to show for it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the why is so important behind any goal.
The why?
Yeah, because that's kind of what you were saying at the start.
Absolutely.
And I was watching a podcast recently where they were talking about like the why behind certain goals. And this isn't a fitness example, but this guy was saying how he wanted to make like $200,000 a year.
Okay.
That was like his goal.
Yeah.
So the person interviewing that person, or maybe it was a coach of some kind, he kept asking why.
Yeah.
Until he got down to the fact that he wanted to make $200,000 a year because he lived in a bad neighborhood and he was scared of his kids getting killed in a drive-by.
Wow.
So what the point they were trying to make in that podcast was the why is really important because it'll help you stick to your goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like, I have a goal of making this amount of money or getting in this amount of shape. When you really get clear on like the true why of the goal, it'll be easier to stick to the goal.
Yeah, and I would also say that kind of goes back to making sure that the level of effort necessary is appropriate.
Yes.
Because you say, why? Okay, I'm afraid of my kids getting in a drive-by. And that's obviously a very, very good reason, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have kids and I would never want anything to happen to them. But do you need to make $200,000 a year to be in a safe enough neighborhood to not have your kids be killed in a drive-by?
Yeah, that's the point, is they eventually got down to that. And it's like,
could you do that with $100,000 a year?
Or less.
$50,000 a year? I don't know what that looks like, right? But, and imagine the amount of stress he could potentially be taking off himself to go, I could
alone.
accomplish that making $75,000 a year and
Now it's much
whatever.
more achievable, the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can actually do it. And he's not going to feel inadequate all the time,
Yeah.
right? Just feeling so far away from that.
For sure.
So I'm with you. I think the why is absolutely huge. And also, to Will's question,
I forgot the question.
is how to create and embrace. No, that's with the question. It's definitely
that's right.
how to create and embrace sustainability of diet and exercise over time.
We started with the why.
I would say the time part, I mean, that's really key when it comes to just picking however much you want, starting small, because you can always build it over time.
Yes.
Most of us, I mean, hey, live like it's your last day, right? Be grateful for every day you have. But at the same time, most of us have a lot more time, right?
Yeah.
Statistically, right? So leverage that, right? You have an opportunity and you have time to reassess your program over time, right? You have the opportunity to go, okay, well, here's what 2 months went by. What worked? What didn't work? How do I make adjustments that are going to be sensible for me?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, but the why is huge, not just in fitness or in nutrition, but just in everything. Exactly. That whole thing wasn't anything to do with fitness, right? And I think I like to use this example because it's always a funny one for me, but my one client, I won't say her name, but she knows who she is. So the first time I ever met with her, for an assessment, we weren't clients.
Okay.
She wasn't a client yet. We were just kind of getting a feel for whether or not it was a good fit. And I just said, hey, what do you want to do? She goes, I just think working out would help me feel more energy. And I go, okay, cool. How are you missing energy in your life now?
Great question.
She goes, well, I just feel like I could have more energy. I'm like, okay, well, what would more energy give you that you don't currently have?
Great questions.
And then finally, it probably dragged on a little bit longer than that, but finally I just looked at her and I said, what do you really want? Stop. I'm like, I could tell there's something else there. What is it you really want to exercise for? I don't think it's energy. Yeah. She goes, well, I don't want to be vain. And I go, let's go. This is the place to just be honest. Yeah. This is a gym, right? She goes, well, just my stomach and whatever. It got into the aesthetics, right? And having that she had kids and she looks in the mirror and isn't as comfortable. And I go, that's what it is. If you had a long day at work and you're deciding whether or not you want to go work out because you're tired and whatever, what's going to get you to go, I want more energy for some obscure reason that has no meaning and is completely arbitrary.
Goes back to the why thing. Yeah.
Or this is how I get that body that I can feel confident in again. Yes. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it.
It's a much stronger why.
Completely different. To your point, that's what was your first point about the why. So once again, not sticking to 3 or 4 minutes, but whatever. That's okay. So next one, also from Will, getting away from the scale as the sole measurement of success, which I would. This pertains to weight loss. People trying to get into weight loss.
Yeah, I like how you feel as like the best way to measure progress.
Yeah,
like energy and how clothes fit is another big one.
Yeah, for sure.
You're saying for measuring progress, right?
Yeah, I think I think he's specifically referring to if you're making efforts to lose weight. I guess it could be the opposite too, but probably for most people, they're going to have more challenges with using the scale from a weight loss perspective than a weight gain perspective or muscle building.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like a regular scale too, like if you're doing like resistance training, we've talked about it, you are building muscle, like the scale may not change much, but you're really losing body fat. Because a lot of people say they want to lose weight, but it's like body fat they want to lose. As opposed to you don't want to lose weight just as weight, because then you might lose muscle too.
Exactly. And who the heck wants to do that?
Right. Yeah. So.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's you're getting older and you want to stay fit, you need muscle. If you want to look good and it's aesthetic, you need muscle. It's like the key to unlocking any of that. And I would say one of the kind of symbolism, analogies, whatever you want to call it, I use with my clients is when you're looking at how to assess your progress, you need at least 3 pillars to have a stable structure, right? So you can't, like this desk, right? It has multiple pillars, right? If you think about a pyramid, right? That's like the most basic structure, and it has 3 pillars, right?
Yeah.
And then you have houses that have 4 and whatever, right? But not that it needs to be exactly 3, but the more pillars you have that are meaningful to you, the better, right? So if you do have weight loss goals, what are some of the things that would be meaningful to you? Would it be meaningful to fit in better clothes? Okay, that's one thing. Would it be meaningful to monitor the scale? Okay, that's 2. Would it be meaningful to use pictures? Right? Would it be meaningful to use how you feel going up and down the stairs? Right? Like the more pillars you have, the more stable that structure is. Whereas I feel like, again, going off that stability component, if you just have one thing, it's just going to fall right over the moment that it gets any adversity.
Yeah.
Because you have 1 week, you're only going off the scale, and you have a month where that you're not losing weight, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the only thing that matters to you, so it's over.
It's easier to give up.
I give up.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I cared about, and it's not changing. So I would say it's key to have multiple pillars, and however you're assessing your success.
Yeah, that's huge.
So another great question from Will. Another one from Will. Protein intake, and the guy himself who is the big protein guy. Do you have anything you want to say on protein?
Protein intake, just like...
In general, maybe like, let's make up... I would assume, just knowing Will, he means what is a great way... if you're the average person just trying to determine how much protein you should intake, how much should you take in, right? Because there's varying information. When I was 18 years old, me and my buddy CJ, we started working out at a local gym, and we're looking at the biggest guy. We just wanted to get big, right? Like a lot of young guys. And we went to the biggest guy, and we're like, how much should we be eating? He goes, 4,000 calories a day, because you need to eat 2 grams of protein for every pound of body weight you weigh. I'm like, okay, 360 grams of protein. I can do it.
Yeah, roger that,
I'm just going to have 100
my body's
chicken
the
breasts.
same as yours.
50 chicken breasts a day, So I think that's probably it. Like, hey, you're whether you're young, old, fit, not fit, whatever, what's a good way to approach protein intake?
You can, if you want to, if you have anything to say,
I'm happy to get into it. So I would say with protein intake, the key is obviously preference plays a component with it. I would say one of the biggest things I've heard people struggle with protein is it's just not necessarily as satisfying sometimes to eat a chicken breast, even if it's cooked well, right? Compared to eating a banana or maybe having some pasta or whatever, right? So sometimes, or maybe protein is satisfying, but in smaller quantities, right? You have like a nice chicken thigh, chicken breast meal, whatever, or you have some ground turkey, or you have some steak, whatever it is. It can be easier to get sick of that than it can. I don't know if you ever feel that way. Sometimes I just don't want to eat meat.
I do all the time.
I'm just over it. I just feel like I'm looking at... I keep bringing up chickens. Maybe I have a problem with chicken. I like chicken.
How much chicken are you eating in a week?
I probably scarred myself back in the day with that. Because I swear,
and broccoli or something, right?
My parents can attest to my brother, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy back in the day because I'm microwaving chicken breasts and just pouring Frank's Red Hot all over it and just going, I got to get 250 grams of protein in. But, so... preference, definitely, that was a tangent, obviously, but preference plays a role in it. But, I would say, the guidelines for protein intake, it could be anywhere from, if carbs are 45 to 65%, fats, 25 to 35%, protein is generally whatever the rest of that would be. But I personally would say, you want to start with, if your goal is weight loss, for example, a good general recommendation is take your weight, multiply it by 1.6, and divide it by 2.2.
What's the formula?
That's the formula. That's like a good minimum for if you're losing weight and you want to make sure that you're not losing a bunch of muscle mass in the process. That is like a really good baseline. For some people that may feel like a lot, and maybe start with something more like 1.2 instead of 1.6 in that equation. But like for me, for example, if I did that for me, a guy who weighs about 190 pounds, 1.6 or divided by 2.2 multiplied by 1.6, it gets me somewhere around like 140 grams of protein.
Yeah.
Right, which isn't actually that crazy. You know, it's like 30 to 40 grams per meal. Have a snack, you're right there.
Yeah.
And then again, I would always kind of relate it back to a lot of the other things we've been talking about, which is start with the least amount necessary, right?
Okay,
Because what are you really looking for in protein? You're looking for building muscle.
Yes.
You're looking for getting stronger.
Recovery.
You're looking for getting recovery. Maybe it's someone who's trying to lose weight and they just want to feel more full.
Right.
Because protein
That's a big
does
one.
tend to make people feel more full. It takes longer to get through the stomach, and it's just a more complex thing to break down. So in that case, you know, just being able to find what works for you, and then be able to build off of it. I would rather, again, say, hey, I'm only eating 120 grams of protein and my results are okay, but maybe I can get more optimized, than go straight to 200 and go, I'm not building muscle fast enough. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You eat 250 grams? So I think that would be a good starting point for most people, though, somewhere between 1.2 to 1.6.
Yeah.
Divide your body weight by 2.2 because of kilograms. And then, multiply it by 1.2, 1.6. And that's like a good starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. And also, quick kind of funny, you probably are eating too much protein if you're farting all the time.
There you go. Yeah.
Because I've definitely been there where I am clearing out rooms. I was doing that a lot when I was that age.
Yeah.
Just because my body could obviously not break down
And that's what it is, right?
200 to 250
Having
grams of
trouble
protein.
breaking it down.
And maybe it also had to do with just too much protein without enough fiber, without enough roughage in general, matching that. But it was just so much protein, and I do think a big part of it was just, I'm scarred, obviously, not protein, but I really do think that's a key part of it is just, you know, little, like you were talking earlier about intuitive eating.
Yeah.
That's kind of intuitive. If you're farting a lot, that's like a good it's a good sign that your body's not processing something all that well. And so you may want to scale it back.
Yeah.
If your wife is purposefully sitting on the edge of the couch away from you, that might be a good sign.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to get into with the protein?
No, I mean, just making sure it's like good quality protein, I guess, too.
What would be good quality protein to you?
We keep going back to like processed. Oh, sorry. Just bumped you.
Nico's playing footsie with me.
Like the processed foods, that would be an example of not a good one, like processed meats and stuff like that. If you can avoid it, best you can. I mean, sometimes, if you want to get some protein in, I like a beef jerky or something.
Yeah.
But even that, you could find good quality beef jerky, with not a lot of additives and stuff.
That's true.
So I would just say, getting protein from, something that's natural, like beef or steak, beef, chicken, maybe like a good quality whey protein. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
I think whey's great if you can do dairy well, because whey protein is proven to have the best amino acid profile of anything. Because for those of you who don't know, amino acids are just what proteins break down into. And the number one amino acid, excuse me again, responsible for protein synthesis is leucine. And, the three branch chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So the leucine is the one primarily responsible for protein synthesis, and whey protein has like a ton of leucine. So it's a great, but some people don't handle dairy all that well. So there are a lot of other good options there. But isn't it interesting how a lot of what you just said ties into other parts of this conversation, right? Like what's healthy, right?
Yeah.
And like habits to stay feeling good, right? So for example, what popped into my head about processed meats is, that may be accomplishing the goal of getting you protein.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to feel good, like someone like me who has arthritis in my right knee, and probably my left knee too, although I don't want to speak that, but I'm like,
cancel that out.
Cancel the juju. Cancel all the juju. But I had a really good day about last week where I was eating super healthy, And, I just said, well, let's grill out. We had a bratwurst and hot dogs and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was really hungry and I wanted a lot of protein. So I ended up having 3 bratwursts on top of like some vegetables and other stuff. At first glance, okay, that wasn't the best decision, but I ate pretty healthy and I'm working out a lot, so I'm getting some good workouts and I need that protein. But the next day I felt terrible.
There you go. Yeah.
I had so much salt in my system that it felt like, I always use my wedding ring as like a good barometer for that, right? If I can slide my wedding ring off, which I don't do often, Crystal, okay? but if I can do that, then I feel pretty good, right? Where there's days where I'm walking up the stairs and my knees are a little more stiff than usual, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I know salt is just hitting me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Or other reasons I'm getting inflamed, right? It might be certain processed stuff that I'm not agreeing with, certain additives that are just not agreeing with my body. I'm not entirely sure. I know that's a science that's pretty nuanced and still we're learning a lot about, but definitely salt's a dead giveaway.
Yeah. I've we've talked about, I've really shifted my focus in my life now to just eating the best quality food I can. Like there's that thing where I've heard people say like, a lot of people are counting calories instead of counting like ingredients. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So it's like for someone like me that is naturally more skinny, it's like the research is like you got to eat more and stuff like that. But I'd much rather eat less and like good quality foods than like more and not good quality foods.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Because like if I'm just trying to hit my protein goal, but I have to eat like a bunch of garbage, I'd rather even not hit the
like 3 bratwursts.
Yeah, bunch of hot dogs. I would just be like, forget the protein goal. Like, what am I gonna not build muscle? I'm like, even if that's true, which I don't sometimes believe that's even true.
Yeah,
I'm gonna feel way better, and then I'll have better workouts, and so I'll just feel better in general. Yeah,
that's. We'll have to put a pin in that because I think that's such an interesting topic of like you said. I don't even feel like that's true. Because, that's a good point of hormones play such an important role. And that has a lot to do with how you train, whether you're sleeping or not, enough or not, stress, eating clean, right? Because, I doubt how many teenagers are just growing exponentially.
Right.
And was that because they were eating 180 grams of protein per day? Or is that just because hormones were dictating what was going to happen?
Yes.
And it was going to make it happen one way or another.
Exactly.
Right? So that's like a whole science.
Yeah.
Just like your endocrine system. And
a lot to be said there for sure.
Yeah. I would love to have a guest on who really understands like the endocrine system like at like a deep level. We got to make that happen. Yeah. We'll make that happen, guys. So another one from Will. Really selfish guy. So, last question from Will was building a program that targets specific goals versus generic. I say we could wrap that one up real quick and just say, you should know your why.
Yeah.
You should know your why. Because, some people have a ton of willpower and discipline and willpower.
There you go.
So some people have that and they can just kind of keep at it. Right, just for the sake of it, right? I just go on the elliptical for an hour every day or every 5 times a week or whatever it is, and that's for whatever reason that does it for them, right? But I think more often than not, people need to know why they're doing something, especially as life gets more complicated. Like you have more stress, you have less time, you're tired. You got to know why you're doing something.
100%.
So if you want to build a program that targets specific goals versus generic, just figure out what you want to do, why you want to do it, and then we can talk after that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Sweet. From my cousin Jennifer, difference between training for strength and muscle.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely strength, as far as I know, is going to be like lower rep range if we're talking about the actual workout. You're pushing towards your max more as well.
Yeah.
You're the most you can do,
Yeah, absolutely.
For strength. And then, hypertrophy is different rep range, a little higher reps.
There's some nuance to that too, right? Like you were just talking about how, you wonder how much about the protein and how that's absolutely necessary for some people, right? I would say the same is true of the hypertrophy style training, meaning hypertrophy, building muscle. That's the technical scientific term for building muscle. Hypertrophy. Like human beings build muscle by basically creating more muscle fibers within the muscle fibers that they already have.
Yeah.
So it's like the best example of that I've heard would be like you have a box of pasta and you're just stuffing more pasta into the box.
Oh, right.
So you don't have a new box. That muscle fiber's already there and it's going to stay there.
That. I've never heard that.
But it's just expanding because there's more. The muscle fibers are basically increasing within the muscle fiber, right? Whereas cats do something called hyperplasia, which is pretty cool, where they just basically create new fibers all the time.
Really?
Yeah, which must be why they feel so good.
Cats are just
like, right, just stretching always. Have you ever seen, forget an old cat, but have you ever seen like a normal adult or a young cat look like they're uncomfortable?
I've never owned a cat, so I guess
not.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, they never look uncomfortable.
Okay.
They never look uncomfortable. They could be sleeping on this.
Yeah.
They could be sleeping on the eVolt. They could sleep on the trash can. They could sleep here, right?
I guess I've seen that.
They just always look comfortable, right? And they're just
how are they doing
ready
it?
to effortlessly hop up onto a table and have it sound like a snowflake just fell.
Yeah, they do that. They're weird, man. Cats creep me out.
I can understand why. I mean, my cats creep me out even sometimes. Like
they do something and you're just like, okay, how'd you do that?
Yeah. So my cat Tigger was, rest in peace. We thought he was kind of a slow cat because he ended up having this red blood cell disorder when he was a kitten. So if you think about red blood, he almost died, and so we were having to give him this medicine. And you think about red blood cells, like that's how you get oxygen and transport oxygen throughout your body. So we're thinking he kind of became special. Seriously, because he just wasn't getting enough red. He lived, but he was a really dopey cat, right? So sweet and so just such a wonderful temperament, but he was really dopey. Wow. So there would be times where I just look over at Tigger and he would just be fully in a corner, staring into the corner, like a kid in trouble. We're like, what is going on over there, right? Like. Makes me think of ancient Egyptians thinking cats were deities, right? Like Tigger's just staring into the next realm, just monitoring
into like a different dimension.
Yeah, he's just monitoring the spirit plane. Like, is everything good back there?
Yeah, he's like, I'm just watching. Yeah,
just watching all the ghosts in the house. Right. So, anyways, cats hyperplasia. So, anyways, muscle building is hypertrophy, and the technical range for that is 6 to 12 reps.
Yeah.
Right. Higher volume, anywhere from 3 to 6, 3 to 5, 3 to 6 sets. That's right. Per exercise. And again, I think there's variation to that too. And that ties into, I would say, again, theme for today is use guidelines, but then you have to go through it yourself. You have to find what is going to work best for you. I have a buddy who swears that even though technically it's a 6 to 12 rep range, when he's doing 12 to 15s, that's when he feels like his body responds the best to just building muscle. And then I have people, my brother's like the opposite. He's always doing threes. He does reps? Yeah, he does triples a lot, especially for compound movements, and threes, fours even.
Do you do that low rep range often or no?
I do, but I build up to it.
Okay.
So especially, I have a torn labrum on my right shoulder, and I have some arthritis in my right knee. And I've torn both my meniscuses and my knees, menisci. And shout out to Joe Asano, menisci. And so I would say, I have to be mindful of just like the beating I put on my body. Yeah. And not to say that lifting heavy means you're beating your body, but
it's more tension on the joints and stuff.
Well,
At
like
least for
everything.
me, yeah.
Everything. It's tension
That's
on the
true.
muscle. It's
Yeah.
tension on the tendons.
That's
It's
true.
tension on the
That's
ligaments.
true.
It's
Yeah.
tension on your body, like your nervous
The
system.
nervous system.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big thing about it. Is I don't know if you've ever felt this where you're trying to lift heavy, and just some days it is not there.
Oh yeah.
It's just not there.
100%,
It's
yeah.
like you get under the bars sometimes and you're like, yes, let's
Yeah.
do it. And then other days it's like, oh my gosh,
So
this is my
different.
warm-up set and this already feels heavy.
Yeah.
And that's just your central nervous system's just fried at that point.
Yeah. So
And-
you think that has to do with the central nervous system?
Yeah.
Mostly?
Most definitely.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it's a carb thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're not fueled enough, but I think there's been times where, like I said, where I was a little, chunky monkey eating every bit of food
Yeah.
that I wanted to eat, protein out the wazoo, carbs out the
Yeah.
wazoo. Like I had plenty of what I needed, but there were still days that maybe I didn't rest enough in between.
The rest is a big thing. Too.
Maybe instead of 2 days, it should have been 3, it should have been 4. Maybe instead of 2 or 3 exercises super heavy, it should have been maybe
rest
just
is
1
like
or 2.
a huge thing because isn't that when the muscle actually like rebuilds?
Yeah,
So that's
Yeah.
a huge part of it is the rest
absolutely.
for the actual growth, not only for recovery but
Yeah, it's interesting how many people prioritize things like supplementation,
yeah. Sleep is like
Protein.
number one.
workout,
Yeah,
and sleep like 5 hours a night.
yeah.
Like I'm going to
You won't
call
make progress. You won't make the progress the same way.
calling out Joe,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Joe used to work here. Joe is just a complete phenom of an individual. I mean, like, have you seen anybody as fit as Joe
No, not really.
in person?
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. Guy's doing like a 100-pound pistol squat 10 times on a
Yeah.
Bosu ball.
Yeah,
It's just,
he literally did that. Yeah.
and then goes and deadlifts 500 pounds 20 times. And then also his hand is like this big.
Yeah.
So it just
yeah.
pisses me off. And it pisses me off again because Joe has, for as long as I've known him, made a habit of sleeping like 5 hours a night. And could you imagine if a guy like that just slept 8 hours, 9
Yeah.
hours? I mean, it's
Right.
already insane what he's accomplishing.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't
I mean-
imagine. Yeah.
But yeah,
Double.
it's amazing though, just in general, how many people, they're looking for all that like silver bullet, like that magic bullet type of thing, where really, hey, can you just try sleeping 8 hours instead of 6
Yeah.
or 7 instead of 5?
Yeah.
It's just so huge,
Because going back to what you said, like in the first 10 minutes of this, is like if you train hard in the gym and then you don't get enough sleep, like you're gonna feel beat up. Like not only just like your muscles, but
Yeah.
like you'll have trouble focusing and you won't have the same energy and stuff
Absolutely.
like that the following day or days after.
Yeah, there's no doubt
It could
about
last
it.
for days if you're not sleeping properly.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that is especially rough with people trying to lose weight because I forget the exact number. These are studies you can look up pretty easily, but it's only a small amount of sleep deprivation that is required to start to increase ghrelin production and
Okay.
reduce leptin production, which ghrelin, I like to think of growlin, your stomach
Okay.
growlin. It's the
Oh,
hormone
okay.
responsible for making you hungry,
Okay.
right? And leptin is the opposite. It's the
Okay.
one that is responsible for making you feel safe.
So those get
Yes.
all thrown off.
Both of them. It's like a
Both.
double whammy.
Yeah.
Ghrelin goes up, leptin goes down.
With
So
lack
not
of
only
sleep.
are you more hungry,
Yeah.
but you're gonna be less satiated. Like you're gonna feel like you don't get full.
Wow.
So, and we've probably all experienced that.
Oh yeah.
Where you're
we
just
can't always get the proper amount
where
of
you're
sleep.
tired
I mean,
and. Do you feel like maybe you've made some worse decisions with food on the days that you've been
Oh.
exhausted?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. Yeah. I didn't know that. So it's
yeah.
super interesting.
Yeah, sleep is just huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people get stronger, not have the best workouts, not have the best diet, but have a good sleep schedule. And I've seen people lose weight who maybe aren't doing the best workouts, maybe not eating the best, but sleep a lot. On the flip side, I very rarely see anyone successful who's not sleeping much.
Yeah.
Except Joe, because he's a freak. So, so, anyways, this is probably the biggest tangent we've got on because the
Yeah.
initial question was, difference between strength training from strength and muscle. So I would say, just to concisely wrap that up, lower rep ranges, under 6 is good for strength training.
Yeah.
More moderate rep ranges like 6 to 12 are good for muscle building training. And tension plays a role in that too, being a bit more dynamic and explosive for strength training, being a bit more controlled, time under tension for muscle building. And there's a lot more nuance to it than that, but that would be a good takeaway for most people.
It's a good start.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
I think the sign of us going on as many tangents as we've been going lately is a good pause here, because we're actually running out of time anyways. I got to get with my next client in a few minutes. So let's just call it there. We've got a lot more questions to get to next time, and that's good, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think I had a lot of fun going through this.
Me too.
It's kind of fun just kind of.
We went in depth with some of them pretty deeply, so.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I think that was great.
Some of these questions were probably like, hey, you only gave me a minute.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. Anyways, all right, man. Pleasure as
Thank you.
always.
Yep.